Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Hi, my name's Allisen. I'm an alcoholic. This filled up. I had a vision for some reason. It was a little teeny meeting in Playa Del Rey, and I'm in a bigger meeting in Westchester. It's good to be here. Thank you, Terry, for asking me to speak. I really appreciate it. Welcome to all the new people. Congratulations to the CHIP people, and happy birthday, Connie. This is a wild gig. I've been sober 17 years, 4 months, and 11 days, and got sober when I was 21. And if anybody had told me when I walked in to the Alano Club in Hermosa Beach back in 1985, if they'd said, Allisen, you're going to stay sober over 17 years, I would have said, that is so not a selling point. That is so not something that makes me want to just stay. I was here because I was dying. I walked into these doors because I was dying on the inside. I may have looked like I was holding it together on the outside, pretty bloated, pretty unattractive, but it was the inside that was killing me. And I came because there was nothing else left to do. It's like, well, heck, I might as well try this thing. And, I'll tell you sort of a little bit what it was like, what happened, and I'm going to concentrate mostly on sort of living life on life's terms today, because I think that's the hardest thing around here is just sort of doing life as it comes down. As an alcoholic, I don't cope very well. I don't have this sort of natural ability to look at something hard coming down and go, oh, it'll be fine. It should be just great. I am an alcoholic, and I think, oh my God, I'm screwed. I've always been screwed. I might as well die now. And, and so I have to come here. I have to keep coming to meetings. Because I have tested this out. I have found that if I cut down on my meetings, I go to 3 meetings a week now, no matter what. Started off at like 6 or 7, and at 17 years, I feel like three's good. 3 holds me steady. 2, I'm a little nuts. Less than 2, I'm downright crazy. And 4, I'm a spiritual giant. But because I'm an alcoholic and I have a little bit of a hard time, just feeling too good, even though I like to use drugs and alcohol to feel that way, for some reason, even though knowing that meetings can actually get me that way, for some reason I don't do it, because I'm just a little bit self-destructive, just a little bit. But 3 meetings is fine. I really function pretty well out there on 3 a week. What it was like. I am an only child of 2 intellectual, very successful parents, and I'm spoiled to a degree, and I was just cursed with potential. I was this chubby, unattractive kid with no personality, and basically was just sort of functioning, didn't have a lot of friends, wasn't popular, didn't really fit in anywhere, and I met Susie McCura on the basketball court at Pacific Elementary School in 4th grade, and that changed my life. Susie was a year older than me. Susie was way experienced in the ways of the world at 5th grade. She turned me on to my first cigarettes, and I started smoking at the age of 9. Didn't inhale till I was 12. And let's just say I was with Susie the first time I smoked, the first time I got high, and the first time I lost my virginity. I guess you only lose it once. But Susie was just there for the big stuff. And it was probably because of Susie that these things happened to me. How I got high for the first time, my parents were hippies. At least my dad pretty much was. And he said to me, when do kids your age start getting high? And I was 12. And I thought, and I remember we were in the kitchen. I remember this like it was yesterday. We're in the kitchen, and I said, gee, Dad, right about now. And he says, okay, honey. He goes, well, I don't want to, I'll give you some pot, and you and Susie can go smoke it in the Volkswagen van, but I don't want you to smoke it in the house, because if you get caught, then I'll go to jail and I'll get gang raped. So, it's my dad. It's true. It's true. And so Dad rolled us a couple of joints and sent Susie and I out to the Volkswagen van in our front driveway, and we proceeded to get high. And I didn't feel a thing, didn't feel squat, but I knew I'd arrived. I just knew that this was going to be the answer, at 12. And I'd actually been trying to drink alcohol for several years. Even my parents got into the act because we were trying very hard to find a drink that I might like. We would go into bars and they would order me pina coladas and brandy Alexanders and just order them from the waitress and give them to me, hoping that I would like something just because it was cute and no harm. I mean, they weren't alcoholics. And it failed. I mean, every time we kept trying. And then finally, when I was 14, I was with my mom and her boyfriend, and he poured me a Bacardi and Coke, and that was it. And I drank 4 of them, and just bang, bang, bang. And my mom's like, Bill, stop serving them to her. And I remember going for a walk and having my first life spiritual experience. And it was walking down, it was over in Fox Hills, the apartments over at Fox Hills, and walking down the street there and just going, thank you. I am so happy to be drunk. I am so happy I found alcohol. And I mean, 14, how do you know these things? And that was just my gig. It's like I was somebody who needed to be checked out. I just felt so uncomfortable in my skin. And what pot and alcohol did for me is it gave me a peer group. Lower companions, one could say in hindsight, but they gave me a group of people that you just druggies just are not particular about who they hang out with. I mean, as long as you're doing drugs and alcohol with them, that is fine. And they took me in, and I really needed that. I needed friends, and I just kept up with them. And also, too, the beauty about hanging out with people who are doing the same exact thing as you're doing is you don't look different. I just fit the part, and there wasn't anything different about me. And that was my sort of rise to mediocrity. I hung out with them in high school, and we smoked pot on the bleachers by day and drank at night. And, pot was just, when I was a kid, pot was just easier to get until, keep in mind, I was this really unattractive, funky, just neither here nor there kid, and chubby, and I lost weight. When I was 15, I went on a diet, and I lost weight. And like 9 months later, I was modeling in New York City. I mean, you go figure. It was such a disconnect. I'm like walking around going, they've made a mistake, they've made a mistake. And they're like, she's great, hire her, and they put me on a cover of a national magazine. They put me on a cover of a couple national magazines. And I'm like, you guys are so wrong. I'm ugly, I'm not worthy, just hello. And they just hired me, and it was really the very, very cool thing about modeling is that living in New York City, the drinking age was 18 and I was 16, I was 15, living by myself in New York City, parents stayed out here in California. I was just this really precocious, independent kid. They had no worries, they should have. And I'm in New York, whereas before I went to New York, my whole weekends were about trying to find the kegger party. I would just plant myself at the keg. I got to New York, it was all open bar, free booze parties, at 15. 15 to 17 is how long I did this for, and it was great. I discovered cocaine eventually, and I did that. The only thing I really liked, cocaine's not really a part of my story that much, because the only thing cocaine did for me is it helped me drink alcohol more. I really loved the fact that I could do some coke and then just drink as much as I wanted. I did not black out, I did not pass out. Now, I used to always say that I never passed out. Well, really what it would be is I'd do something like I would throw a party, and the party be in full swing, and maybe be midnight, and maybe I drank too much, and I would just tell everybody good night. I'd come out and I'd say, good night, everybody, just let yourselves out, and I'd go to bed. And it's constantly, and never flat out passed out, but I just would go to bed. And I had this little problem when I was in New York that if I smoked pot and drank, and I don't know why, and I could never quite predict this, I would just suddenly just pass out, like literally just everything would go black. I'd be standing there having a conversation with you and I was down, and that was kind of special. But I just sort of figured out, well, don't smoke pot, just go drink. And pretty much that was my life. I mean, up until I modeled from 15 to 17, and then I just ate my way and drank my way out of that career. I couldn't stay I needed to be about 112 pounds. I'm almost 5'9", I weigh about 135 right now, so take at least 20 pounds off of me, and I just couldn't do it. So anyways, I got out of that career, and that was really when my drinking started to take off and progress. That was when it ceased to be just fun, and it was just more just like to get my head to shut up. My head just was constant. You know, I just never felt comfortable in my skin. I never felt comfortable having a conversation. Every conversation I would have, I would somehow be standing outside of my body, you know, and looking at the interaction with this person, figuring out how are they responding to me, should I be funny, or God, I'm so boring, you know, just this true self-obsession and self-consciousness, and it was just so old. But when I drank, that was gone. I mean, we hear it every time from somebody speaking at the podium. It's like, I drank and I felt one with. I felt completely comfortable, fun, happy, you name it. And what wound up happening is I went to college, I went to UCLA, and I dropped out. It was just more important for me to earn money, drink, and get high whenever I wanted to. And I dropped out with D's, and they weren't gonna have me back. And I wound up getting my dream job, which was cocktail waitressing. And God, and not only was it my dream job cocktail waitressing, but I was cocktail waitressing at Orville and Wilbur's in Manhattan Beach. Yeah, there's some old-timers in here. That place was Mecca. I mean, you just knew as a cocktail waitress that that was as good as it got. It was fun. You know, we wore these great little skin-tight red spandex outfits with black spandex skirts, which was perfect because I was gaining weight at this point, so they expanded. I mean, when they hired me, I was this cute little perky thing, and by the time I quit, when I got sober, I was just this. It was gross to see me walk around in that little black skirt, like, ew. What wound up happening is I actually, right before I got hired at Orville and Wilbur's, I started going to therapy because I was just having a really hard time coping, and I was just miserable. I was just this miserable individual unless I was, you know, mostly drinking or getting high. My natural state was by day to get a bong and to get high and to have the curtains drawn, unshowered, sweats, t-shirt, cream puff things, and video. And so to get high and sort of eat behind closed curtains by day, really attractive. And then at night, sort of pull myself together, you know, as best I could, put on the outfit that made me look the skinniest, and go out to the bars and party and stay up until 2 in the morning, ideally hook up with people. There was no telling who I would come home with. It was really embarrassing. And let me just digress here for a second. My husband almost came to hear me speak tonight. I say almost, I asked him. And he's a normie. He's about as normie as it gets. He's never done a drug. He doesn't like taking aspirin, and he's never even taken a hit off a joint. And he doesn't get drunk. You know, if he drinks once a month, that's fine. You know, I mean, it's just so normal. And I've never had him hear me speak because there's just kind of, there's some unglamorous sides to my story. And I just thought, well, probably best that he not know a lot of this stuff. I mean, he kind of knows it, but I just don't want to spell it out clearly in front of a bunch of strangers, because normies don't get what we do here. I mean, almost nothing shocks us in here. You know, it's like you can pretty much, you hear it all from the podium. And, you know, we just kind of roll with it and go, ha, we laugh. We laugh at things that other people, normies, would just go, you know, we just think it's so funny. You know, I mean, I slept with 20 guys in one day. They're like, ha, 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 you know, I mean, that kind of thing. And, you know, normies are just like, they're just like with us on it, you know? They're just like, oh, that's horrible, horrible. My dad still cries. Every year he comes and watches me take a cake, and he still cries when he hears the same speaker speak every year. And I'm like, you've heard her 20 times, you know, whatever. Anyways, I almost had my husband come tonight. It's a good thing I didn't, because I would definitely probably censor myself some. As long as I'm on my husband, I'll just digress one more funny story. We're going through infertility treatments, which suck. And we're meeting with this doctor, and it's this very stern, sort of oldish doctor, and he's asking me if I've ever been pregnant before, and I'm like, no. And he says, well, he knows nothing about me. We've just met him. He says, well, with your history, you probably can't get pregnant. I'm like, what, a neon sign? How does he know? You know, I mean, I didn't walk in there and say I'm a sober alcoholic woman and I have a lot of things I regret. You know, it's just, he's just meeting me from Adam. I mean, I think I look like a nice girl, you know, but somehow he got it. And anyways, back to my story. I just did a lot of things that I regretted when I was drinking, a lot of shameful things. And, guys would, this one guy I was dating would put money in my back pocket when I'd leave in the morning and stuff like that. And I just didn't have any self-esteem. And so what started happening is I started going to a therapist. And she immediately, when I saw her, basically said, I think you should go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. And I said, okay. I was like 19 years old or 20 years old, I think. And I'm like, okay, fine. And I went. And it was incredible. Oh my God. The magic of Alcoholics Anonymous hit me. It hit me, just this wave washed over me. I thought, that's it. The obsession to drink is gone. It's vanished. This is miraculous. Now the obsession to smoke pot stayed. And so I'm going and I'm seeing my therapist and she's like, how's it going in AA? I said, great. I said, I'm not drinking at all. I'm just smoking a little pot. And she goes, well, we don't smoke pot in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said, well, my problem wasn't pot. My problem was alcohol. I mean, who truly gets in trouble off of marijuana? I would get high and decide to clean the kitchen, and I'd get stuck on a groove in the stove. Like, there's the stove. I wasn't doing anything that I regretted on marijuana. Alcohol, I was. Alcohol, especially tequila, took me to places I didn't want to go. And what wound up happening is I kept seeing her, and I went to the occasional meeting, and I wasn't drinking, and I was very, very proud of that sobriety until I got my job at Orville and Wilbur's. And my very first night working there, Albert, the bartender, he says, what you gonna have? And I said, club soda or something. And he goes, you don't drink? And I said, no, I don't drink. And he goes, oh, we have to do something about that. And I thought, we do. We definitely have to do something about that. And that's, I started drinking. I started drinking right away. And for the next 9 months, I drank with a vengeance. I drank, when you work in a bar, it's just unlimited license to just do whatever you want, whenever you want, stay up as late as you want. And what I always needed and desired was to walk into a room and go and have people scream out, yay, Allison's here! I wanted to be the life of the party. Now I get asked to speak at AA meetings, and I walk in, and the secretary runs up to me and goes, yay, you're here. But when I was drinking, it's like I just wanted the room to be excited that I was there. I just needed that. And when you work in a bar and come in when you're not working, the other employees and some of the regulars say, yay, Allison's here. And it was just like so soothing. It was like just fabulous stuff. And that's what I did. But what started happening is, like I said, when I got sober, I was just dying inside. I was suicidal on a daily basis. I didn't think I was actually ever going to act on it, but anything that happened, I just thought I wanted to die. I really felt I was just taking up space. I was losing hope that anything was going to change. I dropped out of college. I'd burned through all my savings. I was living at home. I was 21 years old. I was just a walking shell. My drinking outfit was, I had gone to Macy's and I'd found this black dress. It was this black stretch dress that I thought made me look skinny. And so that's what I wore every single night I went out. And I went out 3-4 nights a week when I wasn't working. And it got stains on it and stuff, but I still just thought I looked so sexy in it. Because I think the first night I wore it, I got kind of some attention from men, but then from there out it ended, but I kept thinking I was still getting it. And delusions of grandeur. And I wound up crawling back to Alcoholics Anonymous. The therapist I was seeing suggested I go to an outpatient recovery program, and I went. And this guy, I'm sitting there with this guy, and he's like, so do you want to get sober? And I don't even know what I said. I just started crying. And he's like, well, I suggest you check in, and we have a day program, and it wasn't that expensive. And I thought, okay, I'll try it. And I was there, the very first day I was there, they said, we highly recommend you go to meetings every day of Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's like 12 of us in there, and we're all like nodding our head, oh, yeah, all right, And I went. Me and this one other girl went. And out of the 12 of us, 4 years later, only me and this other girl were sober. Nobody else went, And they just said, this is really what we recommend you do. And I don't know where that came from. I have no idea where I got the willingness to do this gig. I have no idea where I still get the willingness to do this gig. Except I think it has something to do with I like the way it makes me feel. I like who I am today. Before I got sober, I hated myself. I hated myself so much. And actually, at different times in my sobriety, I've hated myself. At different times in my sobriety, I've been suicidal, like truly suicidal, just thinking. And suicide for me is so about loss of hope. Where I look ahead and I think this is never going to change. This is absolutely, unequivocally never going to get better. I might as well die now. And I heard this great speaker once, his name was Sean Allen, And he said something that really kept me going for a while. He said he realized he didn't want to kill himself, he wanted to kill the moment. And I thought, okay. And so from there on out, whenever I would get suicidal, I would think, all right, I just want to kill the moment here. You know, I really don't want to die. It's the obvious thing. It's a really long-term solution to a temporary problem. And then a few years later in sobriety, I think I was probably about 13 years sober, I was suicidal one more time, and it was over men. You know, it was I'll talk about this, just about dating and just the despondency and being left one more time. And I just thought, what's the point? I'm never going to get married. I'm never going to have kids. You know, there's something fundamentally wrong with me. I might as well die now. And this voice came to me. I was sitting in a meeting that I'd only been to that one time. I've never been to since. And I was sitting there, and the thought came to me, and the thought was, I want to see what happens. I just want to see where this thing goes. You know, and that was probably one of the most powerful things to ever happen to me, because that to me is what Alcoholics Anonymous is. It's not the promise that bad things aren't going to happen to me. It's the promise that I will be okay. You know, it may really suck in the process. It may be so intensely painful to where I think I might as well just die now. But I've been here long enough that I know that if I just keep doing what I'm supposed to be doing, you know, and keep talking to my sponsor and keep going to meetings and stuff like that, that I will be okay. And I think the greatest testament to that is when I was well, not the greatest testament, but one of the testaments to that is in my first few years of sobriety, you know, in your first few years, just a lot of things just feel so big, you know, and just so daunting, and like they're never going to get better. And I remember my sponsor telling me once, Julie Caffey, she goes, Al, someday this won't even be 5 minutes of your story. Oh, okay, all right. Calmed me down in the moment. And you know what? I tell the same thing to my sponsees, because I got to tell you right now, if I had to go back and look at my first 5 years of sobriety and tell you what some of the truly horrible, awful things that I wanted to die over were, I'd have to really search hard. I'd have to really go deep, and I could maybe find one or two, you know. But at the time I was going through them, it just felt like this is never going to change. And I can tell you some different things that have happened to me. I will now get to life on life's terms. My dad, right before I got sober, met Wendy. And I am so daddy's little girl. My dad raised me. I never had to share him with anybody. And he met this woman who was so uptight and anal retentive from Boston. I mean, she's, ugh. And then he decided to marry Wendy, and he decided to bring her back out to California and to live with her. And I was just like, I hated her. And but I was taught around here, one of the most important things I've ever been taught around here is to take actions I don't want to take. Even if my head is screaming at me, no, I can't do that, just to take the action. So I would do things like call up my father, and if Wendy answered the phone, I'd say things like, how are you? How's it going? Or Mother's Day, I would send her a Mother's Day card. Birthday, I would send her a birthday card. And I would get together with them for Christmas, for holidays. And she was stiff. She was really stiff. She was tough. And but I just kept showing up and looking alert and acting better than I felt, and just kind of just doing this deal. And I'll never forget, it was Father's Day, 1992, 10 years ago, Father's Day, 1992. And my dad went hiking by himself on Father's Day. And Wendy had hurt her neck, and she had this neck brace. And I said, why don't I come over, and why don't the two of us have a barbecue? Because at this point, we'd kind of become friendly. You know, we'd really become we'd actually traveled together some, and we really kind of got along. And she said, okay. So we went over there, and we had this really nice barbecue, just the two of us celebrating Father's Day. And as I was leaving, I just turned to her and I put my arms around her. I said, I love you. And she goes, I love you too. And I was, wow. And so walked a few more feet towards the door, and I just said, I love you. And she goes, I love you too. And I'm like, oh my God. Okay, it got really gross. A few more feet, I'm at the door, and I'm like, I love you. And she's like, I love you too. And it was just like the sweetest, like, God, this thing works. It works. And 2 days later, Wendy died of an aneurysm. Oh. You know, and it's like, oh my God, you know, oh my God. I mean, this ring I'm wearing today that my husband gave me is her diamond, you know, and a friend of mine was talking to another, like an acquaintance of mine, and she was talking about how jealous she was that I have this rock thing on my hand, and my friend said to her, but what a price to pay. You know, I mean, Wendy rocked. Wendy was like the mother I never had. You know, Wendy was just this incredibly cool, neat person, and she was such a good role model to me. I really, really did come to love her, from starting off with hating her to loving her. And that's what Alcoholics Anonymous is. It changes my whole perspective on life. My perceptions are oftentimes wrong. They have gotten better the longer I've gotten sober, thank God, but even then they can be dead wrong, and I need to be open to whatever God's experience of my life is supposed to be. There are three things that have always plagued me in sobriety: work, relationships, and my mother. All complicated. And work, I'll just quickly address it. I am not a worker among workers, not because I'm lazy. I just always felt like I was playing dress up. It never felt comfortable to me. No matter how well I succeeded, I wound up going back to UCLA. I graduated from UCLA. I got into advertising, and I was really, times I thought I just deserved to be fired. They wouldn't fire me, and they'd promote me, and I'd be like, they're so wrong. And it was sort of not like with modeling. It's like, you're so wrong. You have no idea what you're doing here. But despite myself, I just kept showing up and doing the job, and I never quit a job before I had another job. The alcoholic in me always wanted to quit a job right now. Like not tomorrow, not in 2 weeks, not even look for another job. I've got to quit it now. I can't do this one more day, And that's what sponsors are for, because then I call my sponsor, I'm like, I have to quit now. And she'd be like, no, not today. Let's just take it to the end of the week. I'm like, I'm going to die. And she'd be like, I think you'll be okay. And I wouldn't die. In fact, the next day, oftentimes, I wouldn't even feel the same way I felt the day before. What ended up happening is I was working at this company, and I decided I wanted to go out on my own and see what would happen if I did what I did instead of working for a large corporation, just did it by myself. And I was scared to death, just completely terrified. I had no idea what was going to happen. I just bought a house. I had a mortgage. I was by myself. I wasn't dating anybody even. I just felt really alone. Now, truth be told, my parents would have bailed me out in a heartbeat if I'd failed. But I didn't want that to happen, but I wanted to try something new. And so I did it. And what happened is I was really paralyzed with fear. And at the same time I was getting ready to do this, I read this great part in the big book right after the inventory, and I'm going to misquote this, but the gist of it is, it goes along and it says, we review our fears thoroughly, our fears in association with our inventory. And blah, 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 it says, we ask God to remove our fear and show us what he would have us be. And I thought, okay, so that means if I didn't have fear, what action would I take? Because as an alcoholic, my natural state is being paralyzed with fear. That is just where I go instinctively when I'm not working a halfway decent program. And so I said things to myself like, well, if I didn't have fear, then I would check on health insurance. And so I would just check on health insurance. If I didn't have fear, I would take out an equity line of credit on my house to buy the computer. So I did that. And so I did this series of things, and I got to do it. And about 6 years ago, I got to quit my job and become a consultant. And my mother was against it. We actually didn't speak for several months. She just thought I was doing this horribly heinous, wrong thing. And, it's one of the best things I've ever done. It was a really, really incredible experience. And I never felt comfortable. I never felt comfortable in my skin at it. It never was something that I enjoyed or loved, but I just showed up and did it because that was what was indicated of me. And recently, because of some things I'll talk about now, I got to quit. And it's been my dream, to be able to just be me and to do the things. It's embarrassing, but what I'm really best at is being a housewife, quite frankly. Not many people will say that publicly, but that's just what I'm good at. I am good at doing things for other people, and I'm happiest at this. I've never felt so comfortable and so complete in my own skin. But you know what? I pushed through all my fears at that job. Those 13 years that I did 13 years that I did my career. I did it to the best of my ability, and I got to quit when the time was right. And I didn't quit with any unfinished business. I pushed through everything. And I believe that that's one of the things that happens around here is that we have to, unfortunately, push through all our fears, all our worst fears sometimes, before we actually get to to make us surrender, and then we finally get to get out of that situation. And what's happening now is, 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago, when I met my husband, my mom was also diagnosed with pancreatic cancer at the exact same time. And it was very surreal to be falling in love at the same time of my mother almost dying. And my mother is complicated. She is intense. She can be negative. I mean, just today, she says, "Honey, do you ever wear eye makeup anymore?" And I'm like, sometimes, not that often, because she's afraid that if I don't wear eye makeup, my husband's going to leave me, which is so not the case. He laughed. She just sort of feels that she knows how everybody else should be doing their lives, including me. And she's difficult. She's difficult. But, because of this program, I have my entire adult life being sober. I have hung out with her. I have played with her. I've gone on trips with her. I don't have a single friend who can go on a week's vacation with their mother and not kill them. And I managed to do it only because I've learned to go to meetings, talk to my sponsor, and just act nice, and give her what she needs. And we have this really good relationship in her mind. Me, it's still hard. It just takes work. It takes a lot of concentration. I can't be light of spirit around my mom, but I've accepted it, and it's like, that's okay. And, it has been a long journey, this 3 years of her having cancer. Pancreatic cancer is one of the worst you can get. It's like 27,000 people get it, 27,000 people die from it. And the fact that she's been here 3 years is just miraculous. And, when I met my husband, something had happened, so I'm jumping around a little bit. Right before I'd met my husband, if you'd heard me speak from the podium before I met my husband, before October of 1999, I would have always said, my lifelong dream is just to be a wife and a mom and have kids. That's it. That's all I want to do, not work, just be a wife and a mom. Now, I've had men break up with me over that. I had a guy hear my tape, that I was dating. I'm like, here, you should hear my AA tape. And he heard that and he broke up with me. Freaked him out. My mom thinks he's gay, but that was just my gig. But it was actually, I was very desperate and pathetic about it. It was a lot of what I talked about was just wanting to be in a relationship, and it just wasn't happening. I was out of relationships more than I was in them. And in October of 1999, I had my ultimate surrender. Now, I thought I had surrendered this before. I mean, in my mind, I had surrendered. Here, God, you can take the relationship thing. I'm at peace. Whatever you want, fine. But in the meantime, I'm going to go on Match.com and go out and try to hunt him down. In October of 1999, I bottomed out. I said, I'm done, God. I'm really done. I'm not going to look. I'm not going to act as if I'm looking. I completely, 100%, unequivocally leave it up to you. And if this, God, is as good as my life gets, the way it is today, right now, in October of 99, this is as good as it gets. This is enough. Because this is good, God. Even I get that this is good, and I'll take it. So thank you, but I give it to you, whatever you want. And I meant that surrender. It was like a pure, unconditional surrender. And I threw a New Year's Eve party for the Millennium. It was my worst fear, throwing a New Year's Eve party in the Millennium and having everybody have a really bad time. I mean, I just didn't want to do this party, but I thought, I'll do it. I did it with a girlfriend of mine. I'm like, okay. And my husband's worst fear was going to a party where he didn't know a soul. And he decided on New Year's Eve of the Millennium that he would go to a party that his roommate had gotten invited to. Even though he had been invited to 3 other parties, he thought, I'll just go and push through, because in the year 2000, I want to learn how to be around people I'm not comfortable with. And he came to my party. And I walked down onto my deck to greet my guests, and I saw him, and I thought, oh my God, he's pretty. And and I went down like a good hostess would do, and I introduced myself to the whole group of people that was standing there, and I walked away. And I thought, that's it, God. If this is meant to be, it will be. And of course, in my mind, I'm thinking, it won't be. I've given it to God so much that I ignored this guy the rest of the evening, except for one time when he was standing there with a friend of his, and I thought, oh, he's so pretty, I just have to get a picture, because I'll never see him again. And ironically, there was a picture of the two of us. I couldn't even remember his name. But there's a picture of the two of us. I cut out his friend. And, on the night we met. But I ignored him, and he left the party, and that was it. That's all they wrote. But I kept thinking about him, and I mentioned it to my girlfriend. I'm like, oh my God, he was so cute. She says, oh yeah, he's a really nice guy, blah, 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 blah. And he sent my friend an email just hoping that she would forward it to me so that I would maybe respond back to him, so he could get a little dialogue going, so he could see if maybe there was a possibility that maybe I might not be attached, but go figure, it was God. It was just God, because when I got that email, I couldn't decide whether to respond because I really didn't want to mess with God's handiwork. You know, I just thought, is it self-will or what? So, but I responded, and needless to say, we started dating, and we got engaged. And, you know, it was interesting, right when we got engaged, my mom's cancer, there's a thing called a marker count with her kind of cancer, where you can tell if the cancer is back or if it's receding. And he proposed to me on a Saturday, and on Sunday, we just got a call from my dad telling us that the marker count for my mom had gone up. And it was the most devastating news. You know, it got up to a whopping 130, which to us was just like, oh my God. And so we got married within about, I think, 4.5 months. We planned that wedding. I planned the wedding. And, you know, because we wanted to accelerate, because we wanted to make sure my mom would still be there. Now, that was a year and like 3 months ago. And as of this week, her marker count was up to 9,000. And we just found out yesterday that her cancer has now spread to her lungs and to her liver. And you know what? It's hard because, not just because it's my mom, but because for as much as I can whine and complain about my mom, we're really close. It's complicated, it's hard sometimes, but we're extremely close. And the prospect of my mom dying is just daunting. I'm so scared. And we got some good news today, which is the marker count has actually now gone down to a whopping 7,000. So she may be around for a little while. But I think I mentioned what's happening is we're going through infertility treatments. And not much has come along in my sobriety to really question my faith in God. For some reason, I've always had this incredibly strong belief that God has me handled, that no matter what I go through, I will be okay. And because I've just seen it over and over and over again. And, you know, they say God doesn't give you more than you can handle. But what has been happening we've been trying for over a year to have a baby, and to have my mom be so sick, and to be trying to have a baby. Now, anyone could sort of make the case that, you know, it's stress or whatever, but I'm not working, you know, I take care of myself pretty well. And it's, the phrase I used to my sponsors, I said, it feels cruel. It feels cruel on God's part to be having to kind of go through this horrible infertility stuff and to be sort of nursing my mom. And I'm 39 years old, and we just don't have a lot of time to dilly-dally. Otherwise, I might wait, but you know, she really would like to know that she's going to be a grandmother before she dies. She obviously would like to be here when grandchildren are born. The likelihood of my mom living longer than a year is between slim and none. It's just probably not going to happen. Depending on what happens now, it may only be a few months. I don't know. And you know what? Nothing has questioned my faith more than this experience. You know, I just don't understand what God's plan is. Why is He waiting? Why is this not happening in my time? I don't feel like it's a selfish request. You know, I feel like it's a reasonable request. It's like, hello, God. But you know what I've seen so many times in my sobriety is I've had reasonable requests that have not been met. God, why can't I get this job that seems so perfect? You know, and it's because there was a better job on the other side. You know, why can't I date this man who's just, I'm so in love with and so crazy about, and he doesn't want me? You know, and it's because there was my husband on the other side. I wouldn't trade my husband for the world. You know, all those times that I was in relationships that I thought were the one, you know, where I was just sure that this was it. It wasn't until I got with my husband that I figured out this is how it's supposed to feel. I'm supposed to be able to be 100% myself. I mean, he doesn't care if I wear makeup. He doesn't care if I'm eating food in bed. He doesn't care if I'm, you know, gaining weight and walking around naked. I mean, he just is like, whatever. You know, I wish he'd attack me, but, you know, it's like, God always has a plan, and sometimes it's a sad plan. You know, I may not be able to have a child before my mom dies. I may not get pregnant before my mom dies. I mean, we're certainly pulling out all the stops and trying. And God has a sense of humor because when you're doing infertility treatment, they put you on hormones, and I'm a little whacked, just a little moody. I told my husband, I said that's his contribution is to roll with my mood swings. And you know, it's just, it's a hard time. It's a roller coaster right now, you know, and what my job is, I think, right now is to just keep the faith, you know, and keep the faith that I'm going to somehow get through it. The beauty of this program is that there are so many other people who have gone through so many of these same things before me. I have lots of friends who've gone through parents dying. My mom is only 59 years old. She's young, and she's a young 59. I mean, people look like sisters, which I think makes me sound like I look older. But you know what? It's just, and I have lots of friends who've, you know, gone through infertility stuff, and so I lean on a lot of people. I'll finish on this. Before I got sober, I would call my mom and I would whine, you know, about my fate, and I would just tell her what my head was telling me, and she'd say, honey, other people feel like you do. And I'd say, Mom, I can't find them. You know, I can't find them. I can't find anybody else who looks at the world the same way I do. And I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, and there are thousands and thousands of you who feel exactly the same way I do. I can talk to any one of my friends and tell them my worst head scenario, you know, my most evil thought, and they will laugh or they'll identify, you know, but they won't make me feel crazy. Everybody makes me feel good when they identify with me. So with that, I will end. Thank you again so much for listening.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.